Elberton, Georgia is just 4 square miles in size, but is home to 45 stone quarries, a distinction that earned it its nickname, the granite capital of the world. And celebrating its signature industry is a unique institution, the Elberton Granite Museum. Inside, an array of artifacts, including quarry equipment, granite samples, and intricately carved headstones pay tribute to the beautiful rock for which this community is famous. But one curious-looking item here was originally considered a disgrace.
It is approximately 7 feet in length and weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,000 pounds.
According to Elberton Granite Association Vice President Christopher Cubis, this stone figure was once so controversial that some might have preferred if it was never seen again.
At one time, this artifact was probably the most hated figure in the whole town of Elberton.
How did this statue become a figure of scorn, embarrassment, and outrage? 1898, Elberton, Georgia. 2 decades after the Civil War, this quiet community still has strong Confederate ties. And with the memory of that conflict still fresh in the minds of many, some residents believe their town lacks something rather important.
Elberton did not have a Confederate memorial to honor its dead and its veterans.
Civic leaders decide to commission a statue that they hope will be the pride of Elberton. But rather than using traditional marble, the community wants the figure to truly reflect local heritage by being carved from the region's most common resource.
They had some of the most beautiful granite that was available, and they were starting to realize that this could potentially be the medium for the monument that they wanted.
The town hires a local sculptor named Arthur Beater to create a monument worthy of display in the central square.
This was a great honor for Beater. He was very excited to have this commission.
For months, the artist labors in a secluded shed away from the prying eyes of inquisitive residents. Finally, the wait is over. And to commemorate the unveiling of Beater's masterpiece, the citizens of Elberton gather in celebratory anticipation.
There was a great amount of fanfare. It's almost a very carnival or festival-like atmosphere.
But when the statue is revealed, it isn't exactly what people expected.
Upon closer inspection, it seems to be somewhat squat, and it has almost a cartoonish type figure. The head portion seems to be very bulbous. The eyes are pronounced and very bug-eyed. It didn't look like one of the Confederate veterans that they had ever seen.
But one characteristic overshadows the rest. The statue's hat, coat, and other details make him look like he's wearing a Northern uniform.
He looked like a Union soldier.
Residents are horrified.
The last thing this southern town wanted was a Yankee watching over them.
In the days following the unveiling, the horror turns to outrage. Beater is accused of supporting the Union and run out of town. But the damage is done. Stuck with a 3,000-pound eyesore, residents mock the statue mercilessly in the local paper.
People comment that it looks like a cross between a hippopotamus and a Pennsylvania Dutchman. Ultimately, that name sticks, and that name becomes Dutchy.
For 2 years, Dutchy remains an unwelcome tenant in the town square. But on August 14, 1900, an angry group of men decide enough is enough and set out to evict the statue once and for all.
They decide that he needs to go. And so he is pulled from atop his perch. And as he tipped over, he fell to the ground, where his legs were completely broken off, and he laid there in pieces.
The mob disposes of Dutchy in the most fitting way possible.
They decided, like the rock that he was, he ought to be put back in the earth, and so they buried him.
As news of Dutchy's demise spreads, the town is overjoyed to be rid of the colossal embarrassment. And as the decades pass, the exact details of Dutchy's short life become lost to history, and the precise location of his final resting place is largely forgotten.
Over the years, the stories of Dutchy became like an urban legend.
What strange turn of events will lead to Dutchy's unlikely resurrection?
It's the 1900s. To honor its Confederate Civil War veterans, the small town of Elberton, Georgia, commissions a massive granite sculpture. But when it's unveiled, residents are outraged by the figure's cartoon-like face. Even worse, it seems to be wearing a Union uniform, prompting the angry mob to tear the statue down and bury it. So what will inspire this stone soldier's return from the grave?
Over the years, Elberton's prized granite deposits helped the town launch a flourishing industry, with quarries servicing orders from around the country. In 1982, Elberton Granite Association President Bill Kelly decides to create a museum to commemorate the area's signature export. And to serve as its prized centerpiece, Kelly wants none other than Dutchy.
After all, this was the very first granite statue that was ever produced here in Elberton.
But finding him is no easy task. As Kelly digs through old records, he makes a surprising discovery. It turns out that Dutchy has been right under everyone's noses all along. Weighing in at about 3,000 pounds, Dutchy was too heavy for outraged citizens to move. So they simply buried him where he fell, right in the middle of the town square. On April 19th, a team starts digging, shoveling for hours through Georgia's famously red clay. Finally, they hit something solid.
They realized that this was a big piece of granite. They had discovered Dutchy.
Dutchy is loaded onto a flatbed truck. After over 80 years in the clay, he's a red-faced mess. So instead of taking him directly to the museum, town officials reason that the long-lost statue needs a bath.
They decide that the best place to take Dutchy would be to the local car wash.
After he's hosed down, Dutchy makes a notable second impression on a new generation of Elberton residents.
Dutchy is in pristine condition. He looks as good as the day he was sculpted.
Dutchy is finally taken to the Elberton Granite Museum. Because his legs were broken on that fateful night in 1900, he is displayed lying flat on his back. Today, Dutchy is considered a quirky point of pride in this town, a once reviled figure whose rocky history turned him into a lovable legend.